And now Chris Bedford with the weather briefing.
Going mobile. Oh, the forecast. Hey, good to be back here again. Seems like I was just here. Forecast is pretty straightforward. I think I only have like 38 slides, so it's not really that difficult. Next slide, please. Doesn't look like this is going to make it. Whoops, maybe it does. There we go. All right, so my standard disclaimer, you all have seen this 1,000 times before, and we know that the weather changes quickly and sometimes dramatically on the lake. I'll give you a forecast here. It's my best guess of what's going to happen over the next few days as you're on your way up. But you need to keep monitoring conditions, and as you'll see in the following slides, we do have a risk of some thunderstorms on the lake Saturday night, early Sunday. So you'll want to keep monitoring the NOAA weather radio, especially if things don't look right. If things look like they're changing, you'll want to get the weather radio on your VHF and check in, or if you have other sources. But remember that the National Weather Service, their responsibility is to protect life and property, and they're the ones that you should be listening for the official forecasts and warnings. So right now, this is the severe weather outlook for today. We don't seem to have any problems. We've got a nice, cooler, drier air mass over us at the moment. But if you look up in the upper plains there, northern Minnesota, you'll see that we have a marginal area of possible severe weather. And that looks like it may be shifting down, associated with the front, as we'll look at in the forecast here shortly. And so that tomorrow, and especially tomorrow night, there is a slight risk of some severe thunderstorms developing over Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan, and then possibly sliding southeast across the lake. So that's the time period that we're at risk, I think, for severe weather. So you do want to keep monitoring the forecast as we go forward. All that action by Sunday morning slides out to the southeast, and we get another nice period of weather arriving during Sunday and into Monday. So at that point, it looks like any risks are gone, and so Monday looks like it's fine. This is one of my favorite statements. I use this one all the time. Predictability too low. It's my standard line. All right. So here's the current surface map as of this morning. It might be a little bit hard to see. This is the map from the National Weather Service. So Lake Michigan here is in the middle. That 1,013 that you see in the middle of the lake is actually the central pressure of this low over here. It looks like somebody's mouse slipped. And so the lake is right here. And what we have is this low pressure area finally clearing out of the lake. This is the system, part of the system that was creating all the weather the middle part of this week, earlier this week. That's finally clearing out to the east, and we have a nice little high pressure area which is up over Minnesota now, 1,023 millibars. That is going to be moving to the southeast. It actually looks like it's going to move to the west, just to the west and south of Chicago tomorrow. And so right now, between the low pressure, remember the air is flowing counterclockwise, or as some of my friends say, anti-clockwise, around it. So we've got flow like this, and then around the high pressure we have clockwise flow. So that's giving us a northerly gradient flow down across the lake this morning. And that's what you'll be departing in. This is the satellite image. This is an infrared image from earlier this morning before the sun rose, so it's a little bit difficult to see. But there are, if you see these light gray patches here, these are the lower clouds that we have passing over us right now. But you can see any deep cloud cover, which is indicated by this enhanced imagery, is well off to the north and east and southeast. This is where most of the rain and potential weather would be occurring. We actually have just this low cloud, and this will break up a little bit over the course of the day, especially under that high pressure as it starts to move closer to us. This is the radar, which is relatively clear. A few showers and thunderstorms down to the south, but really nothing to worry us for now. And clear, as I said, we got that high pressure sitting out over Minnesota, and nothing's going to develop out in that area. So the weather looks pretty good today through tomorrow until later tomorrow after evening, when we might get some thunderstorms coming in. We'll look closer at that shortly. Here's the current wind field on the lake, and you can see this sort of northwest flow. It's actually pretty moderate across much of the lake. Down here it's a little bit lighter. It is going to be filling in a little bit this morning, but basically northwest winds across the lake now. And with that flow, we are generating some seas sort of in the 2 to 4 foot range up in the middle part of the lake, down under a foot right down here at the moment. But with that fetch and the duration of the breeze today, some of those seas will be moving down into the southern part of the lake. Yesterday it looked like it was going to be a much rougher start for you, but today it looks like the winds are far enough to the left that we're getting more of an offshore here, so it actually will keep the sea state down just a little bit in the southern part of the lake, so it looks a little bit friendlier than it did on yesterday's forecast. Here's the water temperatures, and they're actually pretty warm, especially in the southern half of the lake. And we put up the water temperature chart not only for your comfort, because that's basically at night especially, that's what the air temperature will be, but it also reminds us that a lot of the breezes that we get here on the lake are thermally enhanced or thermally affected. So in the daytime when the land is heating, if the lake is cold, then we get stronger lake breezes. At night, the land cools off and the water stays relatively this same temperature, and then we get land breezes flow off the land. And this year there's nothing particularly special about this, maybe a little bit warmer in the southern part of the lake than normal, which would tend to indicate slightly weaker lake breezes in the daytime. But it's not like last year where we had much colder water to deal with. So here's the surface forecast chart for this afternoon. And you'll see that high pressure that I pointed out earlier has moved sort of to the south, southeast, and is heading toward Iowa out to the west of Chicago. That low pressure out to the east is moving up into the eastern lakes and lower St. Lawrence Valley. Still holding that northerly flow, though, between those two systems. And so that's going to be driving our wind primarily for today, and that's the wind you'll be starting in and dealing with for the first few hours of the race. So here's the surface wind forecast. Now these are streamlines that indicate what the direction of flow is, and then the colors indicate the wind speed, and the scale is over here on the left. I took it up to 80. I don't know why. Just hopefully you don't see that. But anyway, we've got basically, you can see sort of 10 to 15 knots across much of the lake here, and a little bit lighter closer to the shore where the flow is coming off the land, so it's slowed down by the friction over the land, and then it accelerates as it gets out over the smoother water. Now during the afternoon, what happens, two things happen. That high pressure moves a little bit closer to us. Whoops. There we go. That high pressure moves a little bit closer to us, so our gradient is starting to ease off, so that's going to decrease the wind speeds. But also during the day, it is heating up on this shore here. This cloud cover is going to be breaking up with time, so we'll be getting more and more sunlight through, and that allows a little bit of a lake breeze to try and develop along the Wisconsin shore. I don't think it's going to be a full turn to lake breeze, but it does suggest that the wind is going to get lighter, especially on the Wisconsin side further to the north. So the suggestion here is that it looks not too bad off of Chicago, and even a little bit up toward the Illinois-Wisconsin border. That northwesterly kind of hangs on. But further north than that, the wind is actually going to get quite a bit lighter. And so while it's okay to stay close to shore initially, I think we're all going to be looking to get offshore by this evening to stay away from this light patch here as best as possible. Now this is the forecast for just after midnight tonight, Central Time. And that high hasn't moved a whole lot. It's moved a little bit closer to Chicago. and the gradient, that is the distance between the isobars here, is starting to increase, which means we're looking for lighter winds at this time. And the other thing to note is with the movement of the high down to the south of, or toward the south of Chicago, initially we had northerly winds. Those winds should be backing more northwesterly and eventually westerly across the lake overnight and into early tomorrow morning. I want to draw your attention now to two things further out to the northwest which are going to affect us. The first is this little low pressure area here over the North Dakota Minnesota border. But more importantly is this cold front up to the north. And that cold front is going to drop down, and we're going to see that cold front move into the area tomorrow night and Sunday, and especially Sunday morning. Before that happens, this high's got to move out of the way, and when it does, we'll get into this side of the flow, and we'll start to see a developing southwesterly or prefrontal gradient develop. So here's the forecast for overnight tonight, and you can see that the winds have eased because that high pressure is moving closer, the gradient is weakening, and also the wind is shifting now from more of a northerly component to more of a westerly component. And so we have lighter winds developing up in the northern part of the lake and generally backing with time as you get up further up the lake. By Saturday morning, that high is still moving south of Chicago. It's a slow process, but it is headed in that direction. And the gradient up in this area is going to continue to back to the left. Now, for tomorrow's start, it looks like it could be pretty light just off of the starting line down in this area here. But as you'll see in the following charts, once this high, two things happen. This high moves further to the southeast, and here's that cold front I pointed out before, and you'll see that there's isobars starting to pile up ahead of that. That's more gradient that is going to work its way down across the lake. So during the day on Saturday, we have a good chance of a reasonable prefrontal southwesterly or south-southwesterly breeze developing on the lake. So here's that forecast by Saturday morning. You can see there's still westerly flow across much of the lake, kind of working its way from west to east across the lake. And then by Saturday afternoon, here's that developing southwesterly gradient flow. And so basically the northern 2/3 of the lake are going to be into 10 to 15 and building pressure by early tomorrow afternoon. For the boats starting, though, they're still going to be down here in this weak gradient zone, and there'll be more chance of a lake breeze for just a short time right at the start. In fact, this model is suggesting easterly winds at 1 o'clock tomorrow, right around sort of 3 to 5 knots. But that improves as we go forward in time. Here it is for Saturday, and that high's finally moved out to the southeast. And here's our cold front starting to advance now across Lake Superior and into the UP. And you'll see that the forecast calls for an area of showers and thunderstorms developing out ahead of that. There is some uncertainty as for the exact time of where the frontal passage and where those showers are going to develop. I'm going to show you a map in a little bit that has them a little bit behind where this map does, but it's basically Saturday evening into Saturday night when you'll need to be monitoring for the possibility of thunderstorms moving out ahead of that cold front. Here's our wind field now for Saturday evening, and here's where that front lies, the big bold blue line up here to the north. And so ahead of that, we've got 20 knots of south-southwest breeze over the sort of the northern half of the lake. And you'll also see that the wind has back-built now down basically to Chicago. It's not as strong, but we still have the southerly flow there, and it's building in a prefrontal mode. Up across here, on the other side of the front, the wind is shifting to the north. Now here's a forecast for the rainfall at midnight Sunday. So the shaded areas here is one model forecast. Again, this is just one model out of many, where the rain has fallen in the previous 3 hours. So a lot of times people look at these charts and you need to make sure you understand what you're looking at. This is a chart of accumulated rainfall, Other charts give you a radar reflectivity. The radar reflectivity charts, forecast charts, tell you this is where we think rain is going to be happening at that time. The accumulated ones show you where rain has been happening in the hours prior to the map time. So this map time is 1 a.m. Sunday, so over the previous 3 hours, rain has fallen in these areas. So the suggestion is that the rain is at the southern edge. The active rain at this time is basically in this zone here, just right ahead of the frontal position. So you can see that there's some cells that this model is producing moving south into the lake, across the northern part of the lake, around midnight on Sunday. So again, you'll need to be on your toes from just before sunset on Saturday into early morning Sunday for some of these cells moving out. And once that front moves through, it brings a pretty good push of northerly wind, unfortunately. So this is the forecast for midnight. We still have southwesterly prefrontal flow down here over the southern 2/3 of the lake. The northern third has shifted into a northerly, and that northerly builds quite nicely, as we're going to see in the following charts. So here's the forecast for Sunday morning. It shows that front down across the southern part of the lake at this time, and high pressure building over the northern lake, and a tighter pressure gradient. The isobars are closer together, so that suggests that the wind speeds will be stronger by Sunday morning. And indeed, here's basically sort of 15 to 20 knots of northerly on the lake Sunday, with the front just passing into the southern third. And by midday on Sunday, the front pretty much has cleared the lake, and the whole lake now is in about 20 knots of northerly. I see that some areas seeing 25 knots of northerly for a time on Sunday. And, the boats, especially the boats that are at the back of the fleet here, it's a long fetch, and the sea state will be getting quite large at the so it's possible to have 3 to 6 footers at this time. More than likely, there will be an issue of the National Weather Service will issue small craft advisories for Sunday. Right now, I don't think it's going to be strong enough to warrant gale force, fortunately. And by Sunday evening, that front is cleared out well to the southeast, and now these isobars, that high pressure area is up to the northwest, and now we're starting to see the wind just gradually ease into later Sunday and midnight on Monday. Still basically from the north, actually slightly east of north by this time, but easing back more into the sort of 12 to 16 range, and generally lighter as you get further to the north, where you're closer to that high pressure area. Here's the forecast for Monday, and you can see that high now starting to settle over the lake. So those winds that we have Sunday evening into early Monday are going to collapse very quickly during the day on Sunday. It's going to ease off very rapidly as this high comes in overhead. And so we've got basically good weather, sinking air, and very light winds underneath that high pressure area. Looking out to the west is the next frontal system, and you can see the gradient starting to increase with that, but that'll be probably later. That won't arrive until later on Monday or even Tuesday. So here's Monday morning at sunrise. You can see the winds getting more like 5 to 10 in the northern part of the lake, sort of 10 to 15 in the middle part of the lake, but still pushing mid-upper teens in the southern part of the lake, but very light conditions across the UP and northern Wisconsin. On Monday, again, now at this time during the day, that high is pretty much settled over the northern part of the lake, and that has killed the gradient breeze. So that gradient breeze we have at sunrise on Monday is going to disappear, and at this time we got very slack pressure across the upper part of the lake, and so that opens the door for lake breezes, and you can see them developing on each side. There's a sort of a northwesterly lake breeze on the Michigan shore, and a south-southwesterly lower peninsula shore, and a south-southwesterly on the upper peninsula shore. And then by Monday evening, that pattern continues just as the high moves into the Houghton area, and basically we've got light winds here with lake breezes continuing across the UP shore and then down to the lower peninsula shore as well. But if you look out here to the west, for you late finishers, there is some southerly that is starting to fill in at that time. And then here's the forecast chart for Tuesday. That's our next front coming in for Tuesday morning, and a southwesterly across much of the lake on Tuesday. So here's some routes that I ran with a few different boats, different paced boats. So basically starting very pretty much staying on rum as best you can, given the wind angle. If the wind is more to the right, in other words, if the wind is more north or even east of north, you may want to hedge a little bit closer to the Illinois shore until the wind backs around more to the northwest, and then make your move offshore. If the wind is sort of north-northwest or blowing a little bit more offshore, then I basically see a rum line course. You basically want to get out into the middle of the lake and be ready for that next breeze change, and particularly that change from a westerly into more of a southwesterly. So that's what I'm indicating here with this box. And then this middle part of the race, that's where the southwesterly looks like it kicks in, and actually I should call it southwest breeze kicks in. Then somewhere up in this area here is where you encounter the front, and there could be some showers and thunderstorms ahead of that, late Saturday, as I said, or into very early Sunday morning. And then the cold front passes, and you're basically tacking upwind here to get into the finish, and then the wind will gradually moderate the further north you get into the lake. So actually a pretty interesting race with some decent downwind conditions tomorrow, but then a lot of upwind to actually make it to Mackinac. So good luck, have fun, and be safe. All right.